live.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And if you've been with us from day one, you're a legend. Today's Parsha is Parsha Korach. This marks 2 years since we started doing this. Once again, thank you so much for being with us and supporting us, and for all your comments. And hopefully, you'll be with us to the end of it all,
Yes.
till
yes.
Mashiach comes.
Just to clarify, 2 years, even though we started steadily from 2 cycles ago. So this is the second cycle from Bereshis that we've done this. But the first ever Parshas the Barber we did, and we didn't do it consistently yet, was Parshas Korach. So
That is correct.
yes.
So we feel very connected to this Parsha.
This was our debut Parsha.
One of the very, very important facts about this Parsha, in almost every other source you look at when it talks about Parsha Korach, and it talks about Korach himself, in every aspect that you look at it, everything he did was wrong because he caused the machlok with Moshe Rabbeinu. But according to Zohar, he was 100% right. Everything he did was 100% right.
Explain.
So it is said, is one of the opinions, that when Mashiach comes, the Korach is going to be one of the leaders, because everything he did for Shamayim. His main problem was the fact that he caused a huge machloket within the nation. That was the biggest sin that was at that time, which he had started, which is why it was counted against him.
As opposed to
what do you mean?
He caused it within the nation.
Within the nation.
What was he supposed to do?
But that's the whole point, that you're supposed to find peaceful ways. You're supposed to find peaceful ways to resolve a problem and not go head to head and try to cause a civil war, because that's what was happening. He was more or less pushing towards a civil war.
Yeah, Chassidus talks about, actually, this is very interesting. The reason why I have almost nothing this week is because I've been editing an audiobook. I'm hoping to get it ready before Gimel Tammuz, which is in like 4 days. But
bro, you don't have to explain yourself.
No.
We know you're a tzaddik, and we know the time you spend is spent wisely and towards things that are bringing nothing but mitzvahs. So you don't have to explain yourself.
If only.
I'll stop it.
No, but so I'm doing this, and a lot of it talks about Korach and what he was trying to do. And one of the things that is mentioned, number one, his name is Korach, and if you look at the next parsha is Chukas.
Mm-hmm.
They both those names have 2 of the same letters, Kuf and Ches.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is the Reish and the Saf. And the Reish shows on speech and thought, but without the third line, right? It's only 2 lines.
Mm-hmm.
Without the third line, which is action, right? And as we see that he went around and made fun of Moshe, saying, "Oh, look, my talis! If I have a talis full of tcheles, of blue wool, why would I need to put strings of blue wool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or if I have a room full of Sifrei Torah, why would I need to put a mezuzah on the door, right? That's the idea of not accepting the chok, right? The next parasha is Chukas, and that there, instead of a resh, you have a saf, which has the 3 lines, which shows the action, which not just philosophy, but the action, the fact that we do what Hashem tells us to do. And I don't remember this part, but actually, if you look at the last part, the thickest, the base is on the last line, which means that's the ikar. I don't want to quote this because I didn't see that, but it would make sense, because saf isn't just 3 lines. It's actually 3 lines with the last line having a base coming out of it. It's a very heavy, it's a bigger part of it, which I would imagine is because action is the main thing. But there is a lot to be said about Korach. Actually, what he was doing, he was actually trying to what's the word? He was trying to relate to the world in a Mashiach times way. He was ahead of his time. There has to be first the process that we have now, And then when Mashiach comes, his shita is gonna be a little bit like his shita. But he went about it the entire wrong way. He made a mistake. But his desire stemmed
right.
from because he was a pikeach.
Mm-hmm.
He was a smart person. He wasn't nobody. This guy was
right. He was a
he was a
guy.
heavy hitter, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously he had
to have so many tzaddikim follow you, so many big names, big
Right.
people follow you, it means he had some sort of a standing.
Well, I mean, there were also people who, unfortunately, like in every generation, who hated Moshe, who, even though they were a minority. But yeah, he obviously was a very important person to have so many people come after him and follow him. What they say about good intentions.
Mm-hmm.
So just, good intentions. You have to have the Kabbalah's the acceptance of what Hashem says, the acceptance of the way Hashem did things, the way Hashem commanded things. Not always, a lot of times people go off. Why do they go off? Where do they go wrong? Because they start thinking, they start, thinking philosophically, and they start, getting into their sophisticated, way of thinking. And really, if they would just follow instructions, things would be a lot easier. There's this mashal. This came to me. There's a mashal of a story of a king. I don't even remember where I learned this, but the king told his one of his ministers to go somewhere to a different king, to visit a different king, and he said, no matter what you do, don't take off your shirt.
Okay.
No matter what you do, don't take off your shirt. So he's like, okay, I won't take off my shirt. He really but he accepts it. He understands that this is an important mission.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets there, and he's speaking to the king, and he's in the king's court, and they say, we are making a bet with you that you're a hunchback, and if you win, I'm shortening it, but if you win, we give it was for an incredible amount of money, crazy amount of money, something that could definitely help a king's treasury, not just for a regular man, but even for a king, this was a fortune.
Mm-hmm.
And so he says, of course I'm not a hunchback. What are you talking about? He says, well, you have to prove it. And the guy's thinking back and forth. The king told me not to take off my shirts, but he probably didn't know that they're going to offer me this much money. Like, of course,
this is an exception.
Yeah, I'm gonna take, right. And he finally decides he's going to take it off, and they're like, okay, fine. He goes back to the king. Obviously, he wins, and they go back to the king, and he tells the king, and the king was like, I trusted you, and you failed. What happened? He had a bet with the king for a much, much larger amount that he could get him, that whether he can get him to take his shirt off or not.
Right.
So
we never know what's happening behind closed doors.
Right. So meaning he had all the right intentions, and he was doing it for the king. He did it for the kingdom. But because he didn't just follow instructions, he said, but maybe I know better. So it's kind of like the same thing. And this is a lesson for us. A lot of times we think that we can,
I thought the best example of that would be Shlomo Melech. Because Shlomo Melech, with his wisdom, he thought he didn't have to abide by the rules. And the rule said that you cannot make friends of lower spiritual, beings. You can't be friends with them.
Right.
And he friended the king, prince of them all.
Ashmedai, right?
Correct. That was their prince.
Yeah.
So he befriended him, and almost every single night he would have conversations with him. And now the question is, when the Chachamim asked him, why are you doing this? He says, I'm finding out secrets from him that most of the world doesn't know. The things that that I'm bringing into this world, the information that most of this world wouldn't have known. But it still doesn't excuse you from doing what you're doing, which is against the Torah, which is why he paid in a hefty way. Right. I believe he kicked him out of his own palace for like 7 years or something like that.
Yeah, it's a crazy. I mean, the question is how much of it is allegory, how much of it is true. It happened. I don't want to speak on that because it could be that it's one of the stories that is 100% true. But it just sounds so fantastical that for so many years he had to,
But there's one detail that it does talk about, and it talks about the fact that we read it all the time, every single day almost. It says that Shlomo Melech, at his wisdom, says that your good reputation is worth more than any purest oil or even pure gold, even the purest of gold. We read this all the time. And so why does it say at his wisdom? Because his wisdom had diminished after that happened, when he was kicked out of the palace, and then when he comes back, he as a ruler, but his wisdom diminished because of what he has done.
Really?
So that's why it said. Why does the pasuk, does the Tehillim mention Shlomo Melech at his wisdom had said this and this and that? Why at his wisdom? Wasn't he wise all throughout his whole life?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So when you break down all these Tehillim and you pay attention to every word, and then you look back at the Midrash and what it says, then you could pinpoint on what exactly it's talking about. So some things that we may think may be fictional, but then you see it in one of the Tehillims, and then why does it mention that if it's fictional? You understand where I'm coming?
No. I God forbid to say it's fiction. I'm saying is that a lot of times the Midrash has a meaning that is deeper
it could
than
be a different
right,
point
meaning,
of view.
What does it actually mean? Does it mean did it actually, like, there's a famous thing when it comes to the pasuk, whatever it says in the pasuk is 100% ein mikra yitzim midei pshutai. That even though there are deeper meanings, but the most simple interpretation actually happened. Right? It's not that this is an allegory for something that happened. I think sometimes in the Medrash, some of the things it says is actually means something deeper, and you don't always take it face value. I think you don't always take it face value. There's different things. But the truth is that, I mean, listen, the fact that Ashmedai kicked him and he flew, I don't know how far, and he survived. I mean, maybe it's a miracle that he survived. I don't know, but it just sounds fantastical.
But think about it this way: Ashmedai could never take his life. He could never kill him because it was before his time. So therefore, he has no right to do so. So the only thing he can do is punish him by throwing him out of the palace or doing all these things. You understand where I'm coming from? He cannot cause him bodily damage because he's not allowed to, because that's not what he deserves. But yet he has to still punish him by kicking him out of the palace.
Right.
So to us, it may sound like magic, or it may sound physically impossible, but at that time it was a different time. A lot of things that have happened in the Torah and throughout all of our existence, you could talk about, that has happened in history, that if you go look back in history books, you could match it all up. But the number one thing that it always talks about and comes back to it is the number one problem that all humanity had was poverty. And the main reason why poverty was such a big problem is because humanity still hasn't discovered GMOs. Humanity still hasn't discovered hydroponics and all these other ways to collect crops, where before we collect
before
crops
the age of industrialism.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So before that, a lot of rules applied because poverty was a number one problem. Now, I don't think the world is facing the same problem anymore. Most developed countries have all these things in place. So fruits and vegetables are not supposed to be as expensive as they are. You understand what I mean? So a lot of these problems have just erased themselves throughout time.
Right. Yeah. I hear that. Yeah, I think Ilya is like the Shlomo HaMelech expert. Every single time we have a show, something comes up from Shlomo HaMelech.
Maybe, but I think it's mainly because we read the Midrash for Shmuel, for Kings 1 and 2, and we started with Shlomo, King David's dynasty. So when we go through it, we pay attention to every detail.
So where did you learn this?
We love it. Of course, that's where we learn it.
No, I'm saying where. Like you're saying, you have a shiur?
Yeah. Me. Okay, so my brothers, we come over to my parents' house on Shabbos, and after a meal, we sit down and we learn a couple of pages together.
So you guys go deep.
We go deep. And not only that, because my father claims his vocabulary is limited, it's my younger brother's obligation to translate as he reads it, then to translate in Russian. And of course, he was born here. So the way he learned his Russian is through translating. And whenever he says something wrong, we correct him. So now his Russian is perfect when it comes to translating.
That reminds me of when I was teaching in Argentina. I started teaching adults. So while I barely I was just learning Spanish. So while I'm teaching them Tanya, they're like helping me get the words out in Spanish. But then I started teaching kids, and they weren't polite. So like every mistake that I did,
they'll laugh at everything you mispronounced and all of that.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay.
Yeah, kids are a little crueler.
I mean, they're just kids, you know. They're honest. Let's just put it that way.
They're just trying to have fun.
Yeah. So anyway, this week is going to be really short because, like I said, it was a really hectic week. I wasn't even sure if I was going to do this, but you know, we gotta do the Parshas show.
I believe it's from this week that Shabbos comes in a little earlier now, and it's going to be coming in earlier and earlier every week.
Yeah, now it's starting to recede slowly, like my hairline. No, I'm just kidding.
That didn't come out of my mouth.
I just got a haircut. You can't tell because Ilya did such a good job.
Well, thank you.
So yeah, I just got a fresh haircut. Thank God. So we're gonna just talk about one more thing, something interesting that it says in the Parshah. We're going to the Haftorah, and this is going to be you know, as they say, short and sweet this week because we got to bring you the goods.
That's right.
Even if it's not a lot of it this week. So. Obviously, this week talks about Korach rising against Moshe Rabbeinu, getting a following, and then eventually falling into the hole with Dasan and Aviram and his sons eventually get saved, which we're going to talk about. So let's just read some comments right here. Mendy really did a lot. So let's see. The Heilige Zaydi Korach, the holy Zaydi Korach, holy grandfather Korach, came from 5 generations of Nesiim. Who brought the Shekhinah back to this world in the bus, the idea of okay, very interesting. So basically, he's just supporting the fact that Korach was really, you know, a very, very important and esteemed person. Also, the next comment is Kriya Shema Shalamita, the soldiers around Shlomo's bed. Also talks about the fact that since that story, Shlomo HaMelech had like 60 people. They're called Giborim, but it really means the Talmidei Chachamim. Who were learning Torah to protect him. That's how
Kriyat Shema. That's what we say.
Yeah, we say it in Kriyat Shema.
Right.
Yeah, Shishim Gibarim. And then there's a weird rule about Shadim that they can only cause harm in a specific place. That they were given permission to harm an individual.
Exactly. That's why Eshmadai couldn't hurt him.
Okay, interesting. And then he says kids are not a little cruel, very cruel. I mean,
they're just trying to have fun.
There are some different types of kids, you know, and we all, God willing, outgrow that. And then he says, I think he's talking about when I mentioned the hairline, Persian. Andy, thank you for enriching our lives. Persian. Okay. Very good. Okay, so just something interesting that I saw that so much of Korach, everything that Korach had, all of his belongings, not just Korach and whoever went with him, but all of Korach's belongings also went into the hole with him. So his tent, So there's. I remember hearing when I was a child, one of my rabbis said that let's say somebody had borrowed a needle or borrowed a hammer or whatever it was from Korach and it was in their tent or on their shelf. Imagine just
it went with him.
It just flew. So imagine imagine visualizing like how movies, how Hollywood would do this. Like you see like a guy sitting at his table eating, or at this time the Jewish people were all gathered around. But imagine like you all of a sudden, like from all corners, like metal and things start flying, start getting vacuumed into the hole.
I never heard of that perspective, but that's a crazy one, because I remember it was said that anyone who lives around him, you have the time to leave now, because if you stay near him, because he gets punished, you'll get it too.
Right. Anyone who stayed around there would be swallowed with him. Yeah. Right. So what's interesting that I just learned now, I don't think we mentioned this in a previous week. If you did, I apologize. Mm-hmm. That basically any contract that had his name on it, mm-hmm. the ink itself flew off and went into the hole.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's pretty
cool. So it went that deep. All his belongings, everything.
Any mention of him, his name, whatever it was, because in order that he should be totally erased, there should be no remembrance at all of him. No vestige of his memory.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty crazy. And I think we mentioned this in previous stuff, but it's very powerful. I always mention it. A woman can either make you or break you. The Korach's wife was the one who kind of egged him on.
Right, that she instigated most of it.
Right, and then Oin ben Peles, who was one of the big guys who was going to follow him, on the night before he was supposed to go, she got him drunk and he slept in. And when people came to get him, she sat outside of the house with her hair uncovered,
Combing her hair,
brushing her hair, and they were so holy, even though they were going against Moshe, but they were so holy that they ran away. Like, oh, there's a woman with her hair showing, and they ran away.
But it goes to show you what kind of tzaddikim they were. It goes to show you what kind of righteous people they were. They weren't just all Rashaim that gang up against Moshe Rabbeinu.
Yeah.
So it goes to show you that they had some sort of truth to their purpose.
Well, I mean, again, I'm sure there were all types of people. You had Dustin and Aviram there, who Dustin and Aviram were, the worst. They were basically part of the problem for the Jews all throughout the desert. They again and again and again tried to instigate against the Jews and against Moshe, and it was. I mean, there are some opinions that say that they joined in the chase against the Jews in the Yam Suf, and then they were able to make it out with the Jews.
Oh, really? Then they joined them.
Yeah, there's that extent of like.
But if Hashem gave them the merit to join them, that means there is a purpose for them, no?
So that's it's a very interesting question. Like, why did these people not die in Egypt?
Right.
It's a very good question.
Because there's a lot of Jews that stayed in Egypt as well.
Probably who were not as wicked as Dustin.
Right.
So it's a very interesting question. I always had that question. I don't know the answer.
When I always had a question, why would any Jews stay in Egypt after everything that we have endured?
Well, okay, so the thing is that we know that a lot of Jews died in the plague of Choshech.
Okay.
So I don't know if anyone stayed by choice. Apparently Dustin and Aviram were the ones who stayed by choice, but in general, I don't think Jews stayed en masse by choice.
So when it comes to any exile, whenever people were coming back, there were always people that would stay back.
1 second. I don't know what. Sorry, guys. That was not expected. We're going to turn focus on so that I don't get disturbed. Sheesh. Okay.
Even after the destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash, when we were in Babylon, and after 70 years, when the second Beit HaMikdash was supposed to be built, and people were supposed to come back, only 10% of Jews came back. Only 10%. That means 80 to 90% of people not only stayed where they were in Babylon, but moved more northwards. Why? The question is why. We all ask the same question. The same reason why there are still people in Uzbekistan. The same people. Same reason
Jews
why
were established
in Germany right now, or in France right now.
Well, Germany right now is actually a lot safer place for Jews than many places. But France is a good point. Yeah, people are still. Jews are still live in Iran.
But what's the reasoning behind it?
Because they're established, they're comfortable.
Right, because they have assets, because it's so hard for them to let go of all the physical things. And they're not thinking about their spirituality. They're not thinking about next generation, what's going to happen to their kids. They're not thinking about who their kids are going to marry and how they're going to grow up, what kind of mentality they're going to grow up with.
Okay, well, I mean, there are a lot of people who they care about all those things and they still stay here. There's a lot of reasons why someone, going to Israel right now is very tough. I just had a heated debate with one of my relatives about, why it's a good idea to go to Israel. Economically it's tough. People, you see people there, like the average person, religious families, the parents are so burnt out because, marrying off 10 kids, 5 kids even, is really, really difficult in Israel for the average family. It's not easy. It's the economy doesn't reward a lot of people.
It's much
the
harder.
Taxes there are so there's opportunity here. Why nobody wants to live a difficult life. So you have to really love the land of Israel or have really great opportunity.
I don't know if leaving the United States is the best example, because the reality is we haven't had any exiles from here. We weren't pushed out, or we didn't have any sort of huge discriminations where. I think leaving United States is not the best example of what we're talking about.
The 4th of July we celebrated yesterday, is something that
it became a joke for the United States now.
Okay, well, that's right now. I'm saying the United States is still pretty much the freest country in the world.
Right. That's why I say leaving the United States to go to Israel is not the best option nowadays.
Well, it depends what you want. Again, if you love Israel, you're not going because it's a great economy. You're not going because the government is great. You're going to Israel because you love living in the land of Israel, just like people moved to Israel before it was ours. You know, it was on our hands. Before it was back in our hands. So, you know, people who are going there are going despite the difficulties, not because it's the greatest opportunity.
Yeah, I get it.
But then, by the way, there are advantages to being in Israel, aside from just being in the Holy Land. I mean, you're
besides spiritual, give me one.
I mean, just the fact that you're with your people. You're in a. I mean, forget about like I'm not very pro the way the government runs, because it's a lot of the things that the way it's ran is against the ways of the Torah, including the way they wage war. They don't go hard enough because they care about what the world says, and because of that, Jewish lives and also Israeli lives, even non-Jewish Israelis, are also put in jeopardy. They're not prioritizing their own citizens because of the opinion of the world. It's not smart, and it's also not it's not the way of the Torah.
Yeah.
So and there's a lot of other things. But just the fact that you live in a land with your brothers and sisters, I mean, it's special. Let's put it this way: everyone loves visiting. Why does everyone love visiting? It's a special place.
Yeah, it definitely
is. It's a beautiful place. It's a
Once
beautiful
you go,
experience.
you feel it right away.
Right. And actually, it's funny. I was just looking back. I think it was last week's Parshah last year. You described the Kotel and your experience about how you had like a chain of people holding each other's shoulders and crying.
It was something else.
Yeah.
It was something else.
So but living there is difficult, and that's why most people don't do it. But I just want to mention one more thing about Korach. Why are we saying this? Why do we mention Israel?
So Korach went under. He went under with everything he ever had. Correct? So that means all his treasures that he found, 1/3 of Yosef's treasure, went down with him. So he's going to recover. All of that is going to come back up.
No, I think it's not coming back, because I think that was all of Avodah Zarah. Remember we spoke about that? Remember we spoke about how everything that went with him was meant to go in the ground because all that money came from Avodah Zarah. Hashem made a miracle that it came into three parts, divided into. Right. So I don't think it's ever supposed to come back. Unless maybe Mashiach comes, it could be purified. What was I going to say? Okay, so another thing about Korach, then we're going to move on to the Haftorah quickly. Guys, I don't have anything for Pirkei Avos just because it was a crazy rush, so please find the inspirational Pirkei Avos material on your own this week. I apologize. I believe it's the 4th Perek Revi'i, if I'm not mistaken. But just one more thing about Korach is that the way that he got the Jews, a lot of the Jewish people to follow him, was he was a Kohen or a Levi. Sorry, he was a Levi. And one of the things they did to Leviim is they shaved everything, all their hair, and they also picked them up. They did a tenufa, which is a way of picking them up, moving them around. So they shaved everything, hair, eyebrows, everything. So he comes back home, and they didn't recognize him. I remember seeing someone who was.
What about Peyot? Also gone?
Everything. Okay. That's what they do. Everything. I actually remember seeing my. It's very sad, but I had a certain one of the people who were part of my education. I don't want to exactly say who. People will understand who I'm talking about. People who might know, but he passed away recently because he had Yana Machla, and
what's Yana
Machla is the word, the big word that we don't say, that sickness. And it literally translates to that sickness in Yiddish. And when I went to his son's wedding, a very good friend of mine, and when I saw him, I didn't recognize him. His beard had all gone, and it literally took me like a few minutes to realize who that was. Also, thank God, on a better note, someone who was a family member who had it and beat it. Thank God, he lost all his hair. I saw him. And he looked like he was part of the family, but I'm like, I never saw this guy before. And then I realized it was him without the beard. So, imagine Korach comes back and he's not recognizable, and they're like, who, they realize, oh my gosh, it's Korach. And he's like, who did this to you? Like, oh yeah, who did this to me? They shaved everybody and they picked us up and moved us around. They imagine like that
was the instigation, his wife.
Right. Well, whatever, but there was a disgrace.
Korach understood everything was happening. Korach understood why he needed to be shaved.
Of course he did.
understood all
Of course
of
he
it.
did. Yeah.
It's when his wife started instigating, then he saw it at that light. Then he became angry and started rebelling and all of that.
Right. So he started speaking to he spoke to his wife and she gave him this idea, but he went around and did it. And then all the people who already had something, against Moshe, they all followed him. And then, he had a big following. Anyway, that's just another interesting fact. As we know, it doesn't pay to mess with Moshe, because messing with Moshe wasn't messing with Moshe, it was really messing with Hashem, which is, we're going to bring us to the Haftarah. The Haftarah, I'm going to get to the, I'm going to get to the, I'm going to get to the comments at the end. The Haftarah talks about when the first king was, when the Jewish people got a king finally, right? For a long time, they only had judges. And the last person they had was Shmuel. And the reason why that's connected to this Parsha, there's actually three connections. Number one, the people were rejecting Moshe Rabbeinu. They were rejecting his leadership. And also over here, because they weren't happy with the way Shmuel's children were leading, they rejected Shmuel. So you have that.
Shmuel had kids?
Shmuel had...
Shmuel Hanavi.
Yeah, Shmuel Hanavi.
Okay.
Shmuel had children, but because the ways, they weren't so happy with Shmuel's sons as judges, so therefore they rejected them, and that was kind of an insult and rejection to Shmuel. So that is kind of the parallel between the Parsha and the Haftarah, the connection. That's connection number one. Number two, both Moshe and Shmuel dealt with the Jewish people who were not happy with their leadership the same way. They said, I didn't take any of this greatness for myself. I'm only doing this in the name of God. How many times the same Shemai? And that was the case for both of them. Both Moshe and Shmuel led only for the sake of Hashem. And number three is that Moshe and Shmuel asked Hashem to perform a miracle in order to prove that they're actually correct and that Hashem is on their side. And when Moshe davened, the earth opened, and when Shmuel davened, rain came down at a time when rain was not supposed to come. It was a dry season. So both of these things were big miracles. Now, it's just interesting to show that it's interesting to mention that Shmuel is actually a descendant of who?
Don't tell me Moshe Rabbeinu.
No, the opposite.
Oh, Korach, really?
Yeah, Shmuel is in the Korach, which is also why he made. You remember when we spoke about this?
Oh yeah.
How did Korach?
Full circle. Right.
Why was Korach so confident that he was going to beat Moshe Rabbeinu? I mean, he was a smart guy.
Because he knew later on through his offspring is going to be a big person. That's why.
Which is
right. So it was Shmuel Hanavi. Okay.
Right. So he knew he's going to have Shmuel cover him. He says, "I'm protected." But what he didn't understand was that even though his whole family was swallowed in the opening of the earth, his children who did teshuvah were brought back. Right. So, and eventually, it was Shmuel. And so this is kind of like almost a midah keneged midah, that eventually one of Korach's descendants would have to face the same predicament that Moshe Rabbeinu was dealt because of Shmuel's ancestor Korach. But it's just very interesting to note. I wanted to speak a little bit more about the Haftarah and the actual content of the Haftarah, but that will have to be for next week. We'll be able to, God willing, do that. Do me a favor, guys, and don't just stop here. Over Shabbos, open some books and learn. This is just the tip of the iceberg, as we always say. And really, just thank you for. I think we're up to, a few weeks ago we already mentioned, we're already at half of 1,000 subscribers, 500 subscribers. Really appreciate it. And
you guys are legends.
Absolutely. And say it to the camera. Say it to the guys.
You guys are legends. Thank you for support. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all your comments. Thank you for putting in the time and hopefully learning something throughout this whole time. And don't give up. Keep it going. And hopefully we will see you by next year at the same time. Well, I don't mean goodbye till then. I mean, we'll have you with us.
Yeah, and just so do me a favor, guys. Smash the like button. Subscribe if you're new here, and leave a comment saying what you like, what you didn't like. Just let's interact, and it really helps. And also consider supporting the channel. There's a link for that in the
You
bottom.
said somebody made a comment.
Yeah. So let's just go back. Let's go to the comments.
Mhm.
So I spoke about this is Mendy. This is very mischievous of you.
Don't hold back. Let us hear it.
It says the original Mjolnir. I think he's talking about the hammer of a certain Marvel character.
Okay.
He was saying he's talking about flying metal objects.
Oh.
Thank you for that, Mendy. Then he just mentions that Timche Zecher, right? That the level of Amalek, right? That to erase Korach's name. Hopefully, it's not the case. Hopefully, Mashiach comes. He'll be with us. There's different opinions about that, and
you also mentioned that a woman could make you or break you. Everybody pay attention to his shirt. His wife picked out the shirt.
That's not true.
And of course, he had to have anchors. You that's all symbolic.
Oh, you and my brother are ganging up to make.
No, his wife is awesome. Stop it.
And next comment is like a mitzera. The payas are shaved at the razor. Also, there was a bird offering of a bird, and also just like a mitzera has to bring a bird offering and is shaved all over. Also, the Levium were.
Oh wow, I didn't know. Okay,
Yeah.
That's a good one. Okay.
Yeah, and then
you mentioned it.
The last one is he asked who is Korach's wife. I don't know. I wasn't around then, so I couldn't tell you. But guys, thank you so much. Until next time, good Shabbos. We love you guys.
Good Shabbos, and thank you for joining us once again. We will see you next week, and good Shabbos.
Yep, and this angle finally made it to the end of the video for once.
I know, right?
Kind of for two reasons, because it was a shorter video and also because finally had a full battery. But anyway, good week, guys. Good Shabbos, guys, and until next time.
Thank you, everybody, and special thanks to his wife for giving him the opportunity to come here and make this happen. Thank you very much. We love you very much. And
after those comments, you had to say that.
Come on, man. you know I'm joking around. All I wanted to say is we love you very much, and all of this is possible all thanks to you.
Yes, you guys keep this.